I'd like to introduce Emily Brandenburg, who is going to lead the board through a discussion of the posting of per pupil funding on our report card. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Dr. Salmon. For the record, I'm Emily Brandenburg, Deputy Superintendent for Finance. Today, I'm prepared to give a brief overview of the federal Every Student Succeeds Act requirement to report per pupil expenditures for each local school system and school in our state. The federal Every Student Succeeds Act requires states to report the per pupil expenditures of federal, state, and local funds, disaggregated by fund source for each local school system and each school in the state. The school level per pupil data is intended to provide transparency to the public regarding education funding. This data can be another resource for school leaders, parents, policymakers, and the public to better understand the factors involved in education funding. To meet this requirement and ensure our local school systems were part of the process, the Maryland State Department of Education created a small work group of local CFOs, as well as participated in a national work group. We believed a statewide methodology, although not required by the Act, was most appropriate for our 24 local school systems. Our CFO work group developed the process for calculating per pupil expenditures for schools in the state. Today, the fiscal year 2019 school level per pupil expenditure data for every school and every district in the state is being released on our Maryland report card. Maryland's per pupil expenditure methodology includes expenditures connected to students and allocates expenditures to schools based on the type of expenditure and number of students. Expenditures reported in the instruction, including both salaries and materials, special education, maintenance, pupil personnel, transportation, and food service state categories are included in the calculation. Certain expenditures not connected directly to students are excluded. Excluded items include expenditures reported in the community service and capital outlay state categories, as well as other costs associated with students served in other programs, such as Department of Juvenile Services, Department of Human Services, non-public placement, and early childhood costs. Expenditures that support the entire district are not allocated to schools, but shown as central office expenditures. The local school system level data is the sum of all central office expenditures by fund source divided by the total enrollment. Local school systems submitted draft expenditure reports in February of 2020. MSDE reviewed these reports and provided feedback, and final certified reports were submitted in April. It is important to note that this data is best reviewed and owned by our local school systems. Per pupil expenditure data do not always allow for an accurate direct comparison because factors can vary widely from school to school. Those factors include the number of students in the school, the experience level and salary of the staff, the existence of school-based programming, the age of the building, among others. School systems have the option of including a comment for any schools with a significantly different per pupil cost than other similar schools in their district. Throughout this process, we have worked to provide updates to our key stakeholders. We have shared our plan for meeting this reporting requirement previously to the State Board and to local superintendents. Additionally, we work closely with our local CFOs and public information officers, sharing research and best practice. So this first screenshot is the central office cost per pupil at the local school system level. And you can see how it's disaggregated between federal and then state and local, and then the total. And the second screenshot is the per pupil expenditures reported at the school level. And again, you can see it disaggregated by federal, state, and local, and total. And I wanted to thank you for your time and can answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Emily. I also want to add that we have on our website, is it up, Emily, the data from every school system so it can be viewed and sorted and looked at by each county and each school?
Correct. It's downloadable. And if you go to the main page, you can do it by district, but if you go to the main page at the very bottom, there's a link that says data download. And if you click on that, then you have the opportunity to click on per pupil expenditures. And from there, you'll see every school system, every school, and the comment field as well, which is very helpful.
Great, thank you.
Questions, comments from the board members?
So Clarence, I have one comment. I think this is great. When you go to the site, can you see, when I look at a particular school, obviously I'll be able to see the per pupil spend rate for that school. Will I also on that same screen be able to see the other report card measures?
So it's under the demographic tab currently. So when you're on the school level, you can see where it's been highlighted for demographic. So for this particular school, Hammond High, this is where it is located. We could choose enrollment, attendance, student populations, per pupil expenditures and definitions. So it's all within on that particular school's page. Does that answer your question?
Not exactly. I wanted to know that I would be able to see financial and performance data for a particular school on the same page. Is that possible?
I can get back with our folks who put this together and ask, this is what it looks like when you're viewing it on the website right now.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, but this is very good.
thank you.
Other questions or comments from board members?
This is Lori Morrow. I just have a quick question. Is this, so as it gets updated every year, is this going to be the normal time frame that the data is released, or is there going to be a, like, what's the normal cycle going to be for when this data is released every year?
So Emily, would you address that question, please?
We actually had a conversation about that this morning. That is something that we'll have to determine moving forward. It's June might be appropriate. It'll determine what the department wants to do and what the CFOs would like to do.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no other questions or comments?
I have a question. This is Dr. Hardings.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, so first a comment. Thank you for including the downloadable. Who really love data, appreciate that. I think that allows for lots of people to do a lot of detailed analysis, so I think that's terrific. Second is just a question or a suggestion. Is there consideration moving forward at breaking out the state versus the local shares? I know in the fact book, there's a page that usually lists the state contribution in each LEA and the county contribution in each LEA. And that's really enlightening as you look at some counties that get, well, my own county, 2/3 of its funding from state sources. There are other counties that 2/3 of the funding comes from local sources. That might help to create even more, a deeper window into how the different counties and different regions of the state are funded. So just a suggestion.
I appreciate
Emily,
it.
do you want to make a comment on that?
No, I've written it down as a suggestion. We
All
are
right.
walking, and someday we'll be running with this, but we're really excited to have this posted. And
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Emily.
This is Green. I agree with Dr. Hardings that it would be very beneficial and very interesting to see that breakout of state and local so that true comparisons can be made between the counties.
Haley?
I would like to see if you can provide a summary by county for the board to look at. So the only way to do it right now, and it would be helpful to me if I could see by county how these numbers vary. So just a summary report would be fantastic.
I think we have that available, Ms. Hallie, so we can send that out to you.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question.
Dr. Lee?
Can you go to the previous slide? I just don't know if I'm misunderstanding. So for this county, is the total pupil expenditure only 1,298? What am I missing? Because that seems really low.
Emily, can you address that, please?
Is it something really obvious that I'm just not seeing?
Emily, are you able to address this?
Yep,
You might be
thank you.
on mute.
I am, yeah. I was muted by the host. I couldn't figure out how to unmute me. Those are the central office costs.
Those are central office costs. Okay, so every time you see a county, it's
Yes, the costs associated with the operation of central office. Yep.
thank you.
Mhm.
Ms. Haley?
So when you look at what's actually getting down to the classroom, is that some other report?
We don't have,
I don't think we have that capacity at the state level. It might be something they can do at the local level, but we'd have to look into that. I don't think that's anything that I've ever seen done.
Well, let me just ask it, let me ask it a different way. We know how much per pupil funding is by county and local school system. We now know how much it is per pupil for the overhead that goes to the local schools. So wouldn't it just be the difference?
That you have a school that has 100 classrooms with 100 different teachers teaching different sections. It could be a high school. It could be a pretty complicated thing to figure out. So, I mean, we can look into it, but I don't think it's been done anywhere else.
So let me ask it a different way. There is probably this, I know it's been here in the past, but I didn't try and navigate it today or when I was reviewing this. There's somewhere pupil funding by county. And I thought that in the past, we had also a statistic of how much was going to the classroom. Where would I find that information?
Well, I think it was broken up by transportation, instructional materials. Those are the categories of the local school system budget. So you can see how much, what the percentages are that go into that. Those are the kind of things that were on the fact book before, but not down to that classroom level, but only to the system level.
I think, sorry, maybe I'm misunderstanding the question, but did you mean to ask how much money actually went to instruction as opposed to everything else? I don't think you were asking for classroom by classroom, were you? You were asking for the instructional portion.
Yeah, I'm
So-
looking at this at the system level. I'd like.
Yeah, we have that data. Yes.
And so, and it's on the website as well, right?
Emily, can you comment on that? Because I
Under
haven't
the-
looked at it.
select financial data. That's how much is budgeted, but it's under the select financial data tables on our website.
Can we see that?
What I'm saying is when you look at the report card, there is one piece that goes down to the school level, but then there's another piece that's at the county level that gives this data. It might be helpful to also have on that page the system statistics. It wouldn't translate to all of the underlying schools, but just for that system.
I'm not understanding the question. Do you mean the instructional per pupil spending by system?
By system, there is a per pupil funding amount. And then there's another report, as Dr. Salmon said, that says, here's how much is transportation, da, 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 all of those things. So in the report card, there is some system data. And I'm just saying, can we augment that system data to have that high level data? Because this is only the overhead piece, but we have other data about the funding at a system level.
Well, the one thing I will just say about that, the data that you see in the classroom, in the school, I'm sorry, in the school, is all of the funding except for what's in that page that Dr. Lee was talking about with the district funding. So all of it is incorporated into that amount on that page. It does not include capital costs, which you would see on that district sheet. It doesn't include transportation, so it doesn't include those things, but it includes everything else: salaries,
I'm going,
fixed charges.
yeah, I'm going back to Dr. Lee's question. It's very confusing to see a total of $1,000 when we know that students in Maryland have a per pupil funding of greater than $1,000. Reader, we need to have a whole picture so that they understand what they're looking at.
Okay, well, we'll try to work on that, and I'll work on, getting something back to make sure we're on the right trail.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? I think it'd be good to look at that detail, because I think if the blueprint for Maryland's future is finalized eventually, I think there's a requirement for us to look at those numbers. I might be wrong, but the fidelity would be helpful. Dr. Simon, next item is Maryland Together, Maryland's Recovery Plan for Education, June 2020.
Yes, thank you.